Have you ever noticed how, no matter how old you get, your parents sometimes still treat you as if you were a child? You can be 30, 40, even 50 years old. You may have a career, a family, responsibilities of your own. And yet, the moment you step into your parents' home, something strange happens. The air shifts. Suddenly, you are not the adult you've become. You are once again the child they remember. Think about it. They remind you to eat enough. They warn you not to make bad choices. They question your decisions as if you hadn't already lived decades of life. They give advice you didn't ask for, and if you push back, what happens? You feel guilty, as if disagreeing with them means you are being disrespectful. It's as though the years of your adulthood collapse the moment you are back in their presence. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." This is one of the reasons why parents continue to treat adult children like children. Because often their guidance, their warnings, even their control is less about you and more about the unfulfilled parts of themselves. They project onto you the fears they never resolved. They pass on the insecurities they never faced. They keep you small because a part of them never learned how to let go. Erich Fromm, writing about freedom and dependence, observed that many people fear true independence, not only in themselves, but in others. Parents who struggle with their own sense of autonomy may unconsciously resist the independence of their children. To let you be fully grown is, for them, to admit that time has passed, that their role has changed, that their lives, too, are moving toward their own endings. So they cling. And the easiest way to cling is to keep you where they first knew you, as a child. But what does this do to you? The effects are not just annoying, they can be suffocating. You second-guess your choices, even when you know you're right. You feel a constant pressure to please them, as if their approval still determines your worth. You hide parts of your life, because showing them would invite judgment. You shrink yourself, even as an adult, to avoid conflict. In psychology, this is often called infantilization, the process of treating an adult as if they were still a child. And when it comes from your parents, it cuts deep, because no matter how far you've come, it pulls you back into the old role. The role of the obedient son, the compliant daughter, the good child who doesn't make waves. Carl Rogers once observed, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." But here lies the problem. When parents continue to treat you like a child, they often deny you this acceptance. Instead of seeing the adult you've become, they see only the child they still want to manage. And without being seen, it becomes harder to see yourself clearly. Consider a simple example. You visit your parents and they comment on your eating habits. You're not eating enough. You'll get sick. You smile politely, but inside you feel a mix of frustration and guilt. Or you share about a new job and they say, "Are you sure that's stable?" You don't want to risk too much. Instead of celebrating, you feel as though you've made a mistake. Or perhaps they call you late at night to check if you arrived home safely, even though you've been driving for decades. On the surface, it's caring, but beneath, it reinforces the message. You're still a child. You cannot be trusted on your own. Jung believed that part of individuation, the journey toward becoming a whole self, requires us to separate from the parental archetype, not to reject it, but to integrate it, to become our own person while still acknowledging where we came from. But when parents continually pull us back into childhood, individuation is stalled. We are trapped in a liminal space. Adults in the world, but children in their presence. Why does this matter? Because it shapes not only how we relate to our parents, but how we relate to everyone else. If you cannot assert yourself with your parents, you may struggle to assert yourself with a partner. If you constantly seek their approval, you may seek the same from bosses, colleagues, even friends. If you learned that love is tied to obedience, you may repeat this pattern in your own relationships. In other words, the family script becomes the life script. This is not just theory. Think of the countless adults who still hide parts of their lives from their parents. The career they truly want. The relationship they chose. The lifestyle that doesn't fit their parents' expectations. Why hide it? Because deep down, they fear the reaction. They fear being treated not as equals, but as disobedient children. And so, they keep secrets. They live divided lives. One version for their parents, another for themselves. The cost is authenticity. Erich Fromm wrote that to be fully alive is to be fully born. But many adults are only half born. Their bodies have grown, their lives have unfolded, but their inner sense of freedom remains tethered to parental approval, and so they live as if still under supervision. But here is the twist. It is not only the parents' fault. Often, we collude in this dynamic. Why? Because a part of us still longs to be the child, to be cared for, to be guided, to be protected. Adulthood is heavy, bills, responsibilities, uncertainty. And so, being treated like a child can feel comforting, even when it frustrates us. This is the paradox. We resent being treated like children, yet part of us also clings to it. Carl Jung described this as the puella aeterna and puer aeternus, the eternal child archetype. Within each of us, there's a part that resists growing up, a part that longs to stay innocent, dependent, free from responsibility. When parents treat us like children, they awaken this archetype. And if we are not careful, we regress. We step back into the role. We allow them to guide, to criticize, to manage, because somewhere inside, it feels safer than the uncertainty of true adulthood. So where does this leave us? Caught in a tension. On one side, the pull to be autonomous. On the other, the comfort of being small. The rivalry is not just with our parents, it is within ourselves. If this resonates with you, pause for a moment. Think about the last time you were with your parents. Did you feel fully adult? Or did you feel yourself slipping back into the role of child? And if so, what did it cost you? If this has happened to you, write 3 words in the comments. I've been there. Not to expose yourself, but to take the first step. To know you are not alone. Because here is the truth. Being treated like a child forever is not just frustrating. It is a barrier to becoming the person you are meant to be. And in the next part, we'll explore why parents do this more deeply. What hidden fears, what unresolved wounds lead them to keep their children small. Because once we understand the roots, we can begin to cut the strings. So why do parents do this? Why, even when you've built an adult life, do they still treat you like a child? Why do they keep pulling you back into a role you've long since outgrown? The answer often has less to do with you, and more to do with them. For many parents, raising a child is not just one task among many. It becomes their identity. It structures their days, gives purpose to their choices, even defines who they believe themselves to be. So when you grow up, when you no longer need their reminders, their corrections, their guidance, what happens to that identity? It trembles. It feels as if something essential has been lost. And the easiest way to silence that fear is to keep you in the role where they still feel secure, the role of the dependent child. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we cannot accept, so we push them away. Often, parents project these shadows onto their children. The fears they never faced become the warnings they repeat to you. The dreams they never pursued become the advice they press upon you. The wounds they never healed become the rules they expect you to follow. In this way, you are not just their son or daughter. You become the vessel of their unfinished business. Think of the phrases you may have heard. Don't take risks. Are you sure you can handle that? You'll always be my little one. On the surface, they sound like care, but underneath, they are chains. Each phrase says, I cannot let go. I need you to stay small because if you grow, I will have to face my own limits. This is rarely conscious. Most parents are not deliberately trying to sabotage their children's independence. Rather, they are reenacting scripts passed down through generations. Psychologist Donald Winnicott wrote of the good enough parent, the one who gradually steps back, allowing the child to tolerate frustration and discover autonomy. But not all parents can do this. Some remain fused to the role of caretaker, unable to imagine themselves without it. So they hover, they advise, they intrude, not because you are weak, but because they fear their own emptiness. The irony is that this behavior often begins with love. They want to keep you safe. They want to spare you pain. They want to remain close. But love mixed with fear can become control. And control, no matter how softly spoken, is suffocating. The psychological cost is real. You begin to doubt your competence, even in areas where you excel. You feel a pang of guilt every time you make a choice that differs from their advice. You minimize your successes because celebrating them feels like betrayal. You hide parts of yourself, your relationships, your ambitions, even your beliefs, because revealing them would invite judgment. Slowly, you lose sight of where their story ends and yours begins. Erich Fromm, writing about freedom, said that many people fear independence because it feels like isolation. Parents are no different. To let you stand fully on your own means they must stand apart, facing their own aging, their own mortality, their own limitations. So instead of confronting this fear, they try to keep you tethered. If you remain a child, they remain needed. If you remain dependent, they remain relevant. But here's the paradox. Often, we collude in this dynamic. Why? Because adulthood is heavy. Bills, responsibilities, uncertainty. And part of us still longs to be the child. To be cared for. To be guided. To be protected. This is what Jung described as the pure eternus, the eternal child archetype. Within each of us is a part that resists growing up, a part that wants to stay innocent, dependent, free of burden. So when parents treat us as children, that archetype is awakened, and sometimes it feels comforting to slip back. Think about it. When your parent worries about your diet, part of you resents it, but another part feels warmed by the care. When they question your career choices, part of you bristles, but another part wonders if they might know something you don't. When they still call you late at night to make sure you got home safe, part of you rolls your eyes, but another part softens, thinking, at least someone still cares this much. The frustration and the comfort are two sides of the same coin. And this is why the dynamic is so hard to break. But the longer it continues, the deeper the effects. If you cannot assert yourself with your parents, how will you assert yourself with a partner? If you constantly seek their approval, how will you stop yourself from seeking it in a boss, a colleague, or even a friend? If you learned that love means obedience, how will you resist repeating that pattern in your own relationships? The family script becomes the life script. Consider a simple scenario. A grown woman shares her promotion with her parents. Instead of celebrating, they warn, "Are you sure you can handle the stress? You might burn out." She smiles politely, but inside she feels deflated. as if her triumph has been erased. Or a man introduces his partner at a family dinner. His parents smile, but then whisper, "Are you certain she's the right one?" Don't rush. Instead of feeling supported, he feels undermined. Or an adult child tells their parents about a new creative project and hears, "That's not practical." What about stability? The joy dims, the spark goes out. Each moment is small, but over time, the message accumulates. You are not fully trusted. You are not fully free. You are not fully seen. Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. But when parents hold us in the role of children, they deny us this acceptance. They see only who we were, not who we are. And without being seen, it becomes harder to see ourselves clearly." This is why the pain runs so deep. It is not just annoyance. It is not just irritation. It is the suffocating sense of being invisible in the very place you most long to be seen. And here lies the deeper truth. Parents who cannot release their children are often struggling to release themselves. Their warnings are not only about your risk. They are echoes of their own unhealed fear. Their control is not only about your safety. It is about their own struggle with letting go. Once you recognize this, something shifts. The guilt begins to loosen. Because you see clearly, their fear is not your fate. And this recognition is where individuation begins. Not in rebellion, not in rejection, but in clarity. To see their pattern for what it is. To understand its roots. And to decide, quietly, that you will no longer live small. In the next part, we will go further. We will ask, what can you actually do? How can you step out of the role of the eternal child, without burning bridges, without drowning in guilt, and without losing connection? Because individuation, the journey of becoming whole, does not require you to abandon your parents. It requires you to stand tall beside them as an equal. If this journey eases something inside you, stay with us. Subscribe, and each step will bring a little more clarity. Thank you. So what can you do? What can you do when your parents still treat you like a child, even after all these years? The answer is not simple, but it is possible. The first step is awareness. If you do not see the pattern, you cannot change it. So begin by noticing. The next time your parents comment on your choices, pause. Ask yourself, is this about me, or is this about their fears? When they remind you to eat, or question your career, or worry about your relationship, remind yourself, this is their script. It does not have to be mine. Awareness does not stop their behavior, but it begins to loosen its grip on you. The second step is boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They say, I will relate to you, but only in ways that do not harm me. For example, if your parent criticizes your job, you can say, I hear your concern, but I'm confident in my choice. And then change the subject. If they push too far, you can say, I know you want to help, but I need to make this decision myself. It may feel uncomfortable, you may feel guilty, but every time you assert a boundary, you are telling both them and yourself, I am an adult. I have the right to my own life. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming whole, separating from parental authority without losing connection. Boundaries are how we practice this. Not through shouting, not through rebellion, but through calm, steady clarity. The third step is reparenting yourself. If your parents still treat you like a child, part of the healing is to become the parent you needed. That means encouraging yourself when they criticize, celebrating your wins when they minimize, comforting yourself when they guilt you, trusting your instincts when they question. Reparenting is not about replacing them, it is about filling the gaps they left, so you no longer need their approval to feel whole. Psychologist Alice Miller wrote, "The true opposite of depression is not gaiety, but vitality, the freedom to fully be oneself." When you reparent yourself, you reclaim this vitality. You give yourself the permission they withhold. You grow into the adult you were always meant to become. The fourth step is acceptance, not of their control, not of their infantilization, but of who they are and who they are not. Many of us wait for our parents to change. We hope that one day they will see us, recognize us, celebrate us as equals. And sometimes they do, but often they don't. Clinging to that hope can keep us trapped. Accepting reality that they may never change can set us free. Because once you stop waiting for them to validate you, you can begin validating yourself. This does not mean cutting them off. It means shifting your focus. From "why won't they see me?" to "how can I see myself?" It is in that shift that true freedom begins. Let's bring this down to earth. Imagine you are visiting your parents and they criticize your new home. It's too small. It's not in a safe neighborhood. Are you sure you can afford it? In the past, you might shrink, doubt yourself, feel guilty for not choosing differently. But now, you take a breath. You remind yourself, this is about their fears, not mine. You say calmly, "I appreciate your concern, but this is the right choice for me." And you move on. You did not argue. You did not collapse. You stood firm. That is the quiet strength of boundaries. Or consider this. Your parents call every night to check if you are safe. It feels suffocating. But instead of ignoring them or exploding, you set a new rule. "I love that you care, but I don't need nightly check-ins anymore. I'll call you once a week to update you instead." They may resist, they may guilt you, but you remain steady because you know that setting limits is not cruelty. It is love with clarity. Each act of boundary setting is a declaration. I am grown, I am whole, I am enough. The fifth step is finding allies. When parents continue to treat us like children, we often feel isolated, as if we are the only ones struggling. But the truth is, countless adults live this same script. They hide their true selves, they seek approval, they shrink around their parents. Sharing your story with trusted friends, a partner, or a therapist can bring relief. Because when someone says, "Me too," the burden begins to lift. Isolation feeds shame. Connection dissolves it. And finally, the sixth step is small acts of autonomy. You don't have to overthrow the dynamic in one day. Start with small, deliberate steps. Make a decision without asking their opinion. Share an accomplishment without downplaying it. Visit them and leave when you want, not when they decide. Each small act is a seed of freedom, and over time, these seeds grow into a life that is truly your own. Let's be clear, this is not easy. You may feel guilty, you may feel torn, you may even feel like a bad child. But here is the truth. You are not bad. You are becoming whole. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To do this, you must step out of the role of eternal child, even if your parents try to keep you there. You must learn to hold their love in one hand and your independence in the other. To honor them without obeying them. To listen, but also to decide. To care, but also to separate. And when you do, something shifts. You visit your parents, and instead of shrinking, you stand tall. You hear their comments, but you no longer internalize them. You feel their love, but you no longer confuse it with control. You become, at last, both their child and your own person. This is individuation. Not rebellion, not rejection, but integration. To walk into your parents' home and remain an adult. To sit at their table without losing your voice. To love them without losing yourself. So if you've been treated like a child forever, remember this. You are not alone, you are not powerless, and you are not bound to their script. You can see the pattern, you can set boundaries, you can reparent yourself, you can accept what they cannot give, you can find allies, and you can take small acts of autonomy every single day, and slowly the weight will lift. Not because your parents have changed, but because you have. Not because they released you, but because you released yourself. The paradox of growth is this. When you stop needing them to see you as an adult, that is the moment you finally become one. And from that place, you can begin to live fully, not as someone's eternal child, but as the person you were always meant to be. We have traveled far in this exploration. We've looked at the trap of eternal childhood, the ways parents unconsciously hold on, the impact it leaves on our lives, and how awareness can open the door to change. But now comes the question that matters most. What do we do with it? How do we carry this forward? Because awareness is powerful, yes. But without integration, it can remain only insight, and insight alone doesn't set us free. The truth is that when parents treat you like a child forever, they're often not only clinging to you, they're clinging to their own youth, their own relevance, their own sense of purpose. To fully see you as an adult would mean confronting time itself, its passing, its finality, its limits. That doesn't excuse the effect, but it explains why the pattern is so hard to break. The infantilization of adult children is rarely just about control. It is also about fear. And here is the paradox. The very fear that keeps them from letting go is the same fear that keeps you from fully claiming yourself. Their inability to face endings becomes the reason you hesitate to begin anew. When we understand this, the battle shifts. It is no longer only about you against them or them against you. It is about fear against freedom, and the only way out is to choose freedom even when fear still lingers. To choose freedom means to grieve. It means letting go of the fantasy that one day your parents will perfectly see you, affirm you, and treat you as an equal. It means mourning the fact that the childhood you needed may never have been given, and the parental recognition you crave may never arrive. This grief is sharp, but it is clarifying. Because once you release the hope of being fully seen by them, you free yourself to fully see yourself. And from there, love becomes possible again. Not the dependent love of the child, but the chosen love of the adult. You may never have the parents you wanted, but you can have the life you need. You can care for them without collapsing into obedience. You can honor them without shrinking into the role of child. You can visit them without losing yourself at the door. This is not rejection, it is integration. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Individuation does not mean cutting ties. It does not mean pretending you weren't shaped by your family. It means acknowledging the shaping and then choosing who you will become anyway. You take what was broken, what was incomplete, what was withheld, and you transform it into fuel for your own wholeness. That is the privilege, that is the work. So imagine this. A child sits at the table, waiting for permission to eat. Their parents comment, advise, correct, warn, and the child obeys, shrinking smaller with every word. Years pass. The child grows. They sit at the same table. The voices are still there, still instructing, still warning. But this time, the adult picks up the fork. They eat, they smile, no permission asked. none required. That small act, that quiet defiance, is what adulthood truly means. Not the storm of rebellion, but the calm act of selfhood. This is where our journey leaves us for now. If you've seen yourself in these words, if you've felt the strange collapse back into childhood whenever you are with your parents, then know this: you're not alone. The script is old, but the actor is new. The stage is familiar, but the performance can change. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can refuse to let it dictate your future. You cannot control how they see you, but you can decide how you will see yourself. And that is enough. But we are not done yet, because the next step in this journey is shame. The hidden thread that ties so much of this together, the reason you hesitate to say no, the reason you carry guilt long after you've outgrown the role, the reason you collapse into old patterns even when you know better. In the next video, we'll look closely at shame, how it binds us, how it silences us, how it keeps us small, and more importantly, how the act of saying no is not just a refusal, but a rebirth. Perhaps the next video will bring you the clarity you've been waiting for. Perhaps it will give you language for the feeling you've never spoken. Perhaps it will be the step that carries you from reflection into action. So stay with me. Keep walking. Because every step you take out of the old role brings you closer to the life that is already waiting for you.